So this is a GarbAugust video, and if that needs explaining, head on over to Criminoli's channel and take his course on trashy literature. But GarbAugust is a reading event with prompts, and I'm going to show you some of my selections and suggestions. And I wanted to start off just real quick with this book here. This is a real-life satanic panic book published in none other than GarbAugust of 1974. That's 50 years ago today. And I read this one already because I thought I'd want to say something about it, but honestly, there's too much to unpack, so maybe later. But sticking with this satanic panic theme, we have this one from the Paperbacks from Hell era. And I read the back of this one, and yes, that cover does happen in the book. Satan's face does appear in the sky over the city. And that's because Satan is riding in on the tail of Halley's Comet. Yeah, so it's capitalizing on that public panic of the comet as well. And this was published in 1982, I guess just 3 years before the comet was scheduled to be at its closest to Earth. And then I've got one more for the Public Panic Division. And that's this one, The Day the Children Vanished by Hugh Pentecost, which is a pseudonym for Judson Phillips. But this one is particularly trashy. As you can see on the top, this is the book written before the Chowchilla kidnapping. Now, I didn't know what that was, so I watched a documentary on YouTube about it, and it was a group, like 3 or 4 well-to-do young men kidnapped a school bus full of children and the driver, and then buried them alive in a makeshift bunker in a quarry to hold for ransom money. But the kids and the driver made this daring escape and got out, and the guys went to jail. But because this happened so long ago, the documentary was catching up with the victims of the crime, who are still all shook up. But the guys who did it are out and back to living their well-to-do lifestyles. So what is this book actually about? Well, I don't know, because all it says on the back is there any connection between the Chowchilla kidnapping and this book? Well, apparently 18 years ago, some lady read in the pulps a story that she thinks has everything to do with it. And she told the sheriff, and now the police have the book and are looking at it. Could you imagine the pandemonium at Pocket Books when they got that? Stop the presses! Get me those plates! And that was in July that happened. And they had this book out and published by October, just in time to be a bestseller for Christmas. And you guys, look at this authentic inscription on the inside. Keith, Christmas 1976. I don't know if you can see that. But Keith understood the assignment. But it doesn't stop there either. Like, look at this. It says, this novel is the expanded version of the short story, The Day the Children Vanished by Hugh Pentecost. What? Expanded how much? Expanded by who? Expanded on why? To better suit the narrative that, yes, indeed, this book did have everything to do with the kidnapping? That is a trashy thing to do. But anyway, let's move on to something more light. This is already getting out of hand. Next up is oddly specific subgenre. And I have that right here with The Jake of Diamonds by Don von Elsner. So I guess Don von Elsner, along with being an author, is also a competitive bridge player. And so is his protagonist, Jake Winkman. And this series takes place in the world of competitive bridge playing. And like throughout the book, it's peppered with these like suspenseful bridge plays. And anytime I've played bridge, I've had to have it explained to me first. So I'll have to brush up on my bridge playing to see if I can detect any cheating or anything like that. But how oddly specific, though. Look at this. And listen to how trashy it sounds. The sun was hot. The girls were willing, too willing, even for a fast shuffler like Jake Winkman. He's really cornering the market here. I don't know how many you expect to sell, but yeah, I'm definitely excited about that one. And then movie novelizations. I found the perfect movie novelization for this event too. The Last of the Cowboys, which was a roaring hit movie starring Henry Fonda. And this one has that CB radio vibe that Roy Reads Anything was going on about last year. It says, as long as the voices sounded on CB, they'd be telling the story loud and clear of the greatest cross-country run an 18-wheel Kenworth ever made. And I guess what this is about is some washed-up trucker. I guess he's being forced into retirement, and his rig has been impounded. But he gets word of this brothel that's been busted, and I guess all the sex trade workers are fleeing across country. So he breaks his rig out of impound and curries them across country, I guess. I don't know. I've never seen the movie. I haven't read this yet. But it's got color photos from it. You can see him in his big rig smashing through some police cars right there. So that's definitely on the list. But let's move on. And for the men's adventure prompt, I thought I would go with some of the more underrepresented characters in the genre, like perhaps a black man or a woman. These were both published in 1974. And look at these two. They look like they could be in their own trashy movie together. And I know Andrew Offutt is a sleaze writer, and going into Operation Supermiss, I thought it could be one of two things. It could either be, respectable, or it could be straight up sexploitation. This is Eve Drum, and this is Eve Smith. But I think I'm going to wait for Dr. November, the spy and espionage reading event, to talk about Operation Supermiss. Now the Iceman, though, he's risen from the streets of Harlem to now live in a pleasure palace, and he has his own army of women trained in the martial arts, and it's kung fu, blaxploitation, action adventure. And I found this book in a bookstore for $4, and I was super jazzed about that, because I have paid much more for other Iceman books, and you'll see them on this channel. But I'll show you another book by the same author. This is My Name is Black. This is number 1 in the series, and it's published by Pinnacle, which is the same publisher that put out The Executioner. This is the first book in that series. And this actually has an ad for The Executioner in the back of it, along with all the other Pinnacle men's adventure books. But that's not the ad that I want to show you, because a book with a cigarette ad in it is another box on the GarbAugust board. And most of the books I have with cigarette ads in them is for Kent, but this is the trashiest Kent ad yet, because it's got the Kent collectibles on the back. And I mean, the beer steins in the ice bucket I can see, but the popcorn maker? That belongs in a trashy household. Like, oh, come on over and we'll smoke cigarettes and eat popcorn and read trashy paperbacks. But Joseph Nazel, though, horror authors might recognize him as being the one who wrote The Black Exorcist, which is featured in Paperbacks from Hell. And in this book, Grady Hendrix talks about Holloway House, which is the publisher for Iceman. And he says how they were a trashy, white-owned publisher that was capitalizing on the blaxploitation boom of the 70s. And I'll show you my vintage Holloway House edition of Dope Fiend by Donald Goines, because drugs is another prompt on the bingo board. And I know Criminali is working his way through the Donald Goines right now. I don't know if he's got to Dope Fiend or not, but this book is appalling. It scarred me for life. It was a gripping page turner, but trigger warnings, of course. And if you're not familiar with Donald Goines, look him up, because he has a fascinating story. And I'll show you my edition of Never Die Alone. I believe Dope Fiend was his first book, and this was his last book, published posthumously. And I found this book in my local Value Village in the true crime section. And you can kind of see why. And even on the back of it, like, this is fiction, but even on the back of it, it says, like all Goines' novels, Never Die Alone is based on truth. And some say that these truths that he was writing about may have something to do with his unsolved murder. But all Donald Goines books I've read have been outstanding, so I definitely can suggest those, but they are super bleak. And Never Die Alone was actually has a movie based on it, starring DMX, and I have not seen that, but one of the dimensions in GarbAugust 3D is watch a trashy film, so I guess that is my recommendation for myself, to watch that movie. But anyway, we'll move on again. The next prompt was read a book with nudity on the cover. And these two Mickey Spillane books feature a nude Mrs. Spillane on the cover. And the hardcover of the Erection set is not censored. And I read this one last week. And it's a standalone. It's not Mike Hammer. You get Dog. And Dog is a tough guy, and he's got the mob after him. It's got executioner feel to it. But it's the sleaze in this book that's super raunchy. Even though it all happens off page, it's just the way they talk about it. Like, there's a working girl telling a potential client about her abilities and her skill set. And she's not doing these things, but she's talking about it. And The Last Cop Out, I've not read that one yet, but I did see at Bad Taste Books recently picked up a copy of that, so definitely check out his channel. Maybe he'll do a review of it in the future. And how about some illustrated full frontal? Flash Gordon, I'd say she does that. This is The Witch Queen of Mongo, Alex Raymond's original story, adapted into a novel by Karsten Bingham. And that might be a typo on the publisher's part, which would be super trashy, or it's a sorry excuse for a pseudonym from Carson Bingham, which I think it is. I have not read Flash Gordon yet, but I have read this, Something Nasty in the Woodshed by Kyril Bonfiglioli. And if you look closely, there's a toad in the background. But there's a lot of talk about separating the author from the work. And that's exactly what this author wants you to do. Even on the inside, if I can find it, he says, the fictional narrator is a nasty, waspish man. Pray do not confuse him with the author, who is gentle and kind. So this is a comedy, but at its root, it is an anti-feminist comedy. But I think the author has a lot more to say in it. This isn't a He-Man Woman Haters Club essential read, but the character Charlie Mordecai is definitely a member. And this is book 3 in the Mordecai series. And I definitely want to get the first two and read them because I thought that this was really well done. It is funny. The dialogue is spot on. I mean, it's a penguin orange spine, so it's got to be good, right? But yeah, maybe once I get the other books, I'll do a review of all three of them. Next up was read a book with a step back cover. I've got Conjure Wife by Fritz Lieber. And that indeed has a very nice full spread step back cover art. I haven't read this one yet, but I guess it's about all the wives in the town are hooked on witchcraft and the husbands have to stop them. I don't know. Animal Attacks book. This one I read already too. Alligator by Shelley Katz. That's not a step back cover. I know it looks like it, but that is all nicely embossed like alligator skin. And you do get the full artwork on the back, which is really nice. And I saw Greg from another Booby File Reads Playboy for the Articles, a host for GarbAugust, has an old video on his channel where he reviews this book. And he's read it twice now. And I liked it. I liked it the way teenage Greg liked it. It is much more character building than it is Alligator Attacks, but I thought it was good. It kept me going. And next category, romance. I found one of those NASCAR Harlequins that Criminale was talking about. This one is a bit more girthy than Ollie's, but it is NASCAR Library Collection. And I don't know anything about cars other than they pollute, but this was $1 at the thrift shop, so I couldn't say no. And you read what you own, right? So now I've got to. And in the Memorial Square, we have Pax for Pax by Middleton Kiefer. And I know that doesn't really fit the prompts, but you can see where I'm coming from with that one. And then for Alice, it was a cozy mystery. The more cat, the better. And I have Cat Among the Pigeons by Agatha Christie. And this book belonged to my grandmother. And last but not least, for modern trash, we have the Garbology, the anthology of awesome trash, edited by Troy Tradeup. And that's really nice too. They've got a nice matte finish on it. It's got a really good looking spine. That looks really nice on the shelf. Crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. I love that kind of thing. And there's a really nice introduction in here too by Criminale into trash literature. But yeah, I think that's really great, and I hope they make some more of those in the coming years. But anyway, that's been my TBR for the month of August. I hope I've put something on your radar. If not, I'll try again in another video. But until then, over and out.